I want to welcome you. This is Brian Gibbons with REIskills.com talking about creative financing, and it says this is critical. Well, it is critical because if you can't do this part of it, you can't do real estate investing. Uh, just a little bit about me. For the last 20 years, actually almost 25 years now, I've been using creative financing, and it started back in the 80s when the interest rates were very high due to the oil embargo. And I remember lines around the block trying to get gas. We just couldn't get gas as when I was a teenager to a young in my early 20s. So, at the end of the day, what we want to be able to do is how can we use creative financing to be able to buy and sell our properties, okay? So, it's so important that you understand what these creative finance strategies are, okay? We're going to break down how these things work, okay? We're going to talk about specific strategies for buying a home to live in with no money down, along with strategies that will even allow you to walk away from a closing with cash in your hand. And as we go through these finance strategies, we're also going to help you identify what type of deals and strategies best fit your abilities. This is important, and your financial goals, so that you can make confident and informed investment decisions. So you need to know the money sources. You need to know the money sources. So these money sources are important. They're banks and mortgage brokers and hard money lenders, partners, credit cards, IRA accounts, and government loan programs. Okay? And you got to address credit issues. That's important. Okay? And you got to know the truth of no money down. What does that mean? So before we get started, let's talk about the truth about no money down. You may have preconceived ideas on how no down payment real estate investing actually is done, but chances are many of your perceptions are wrong. They're not correct. There's numerous ways you can buy real estate with no down payment, and some of these ways include getting seller financing, doing a lease option, buying a property using private money, or flipping a property wholesale. Now, can the seller still get some cash? One misconception many people have is that no money down means that the seller does not get any money. But this is not always the case. It just means that you as an investor are not going to take money out of your own pocket to buy the property. Many times, the seller is going to get some money, and this money could come from any number of sources. The money could come from a loan that you borrow, maybe, or the money could come from your end buyer if you're doing a wholesale flip or a lease option flip. In a case where the seller holds a seller-held mortgage, like a wraparound mortgage, you could help the seller sell some of those payments on a note to a note buyer. Now, what's OPM? Everybody knows what OPM means. OPM means other people's money, right? As the old saying goes, it takes money to make money. However, the money it takes does not have to be your own money. It can be OPM or other people's money, or even other people's credit. That's why we call them credit partners. Just for starters, OPM, you could be money from a private lender or a JV partner, or it could even be the seller's existing financing. There's numerous ways that you can make money in real estate without taking money out of your own pocket and using your own credit. By the way, if you just want to become truly wealthy in real estate, you must learn how to use other people's money to do it. So it doesn't take your own money to make money. It just takes the knowledge of how to make money either without using money or without using other people's money, by using other people's money. That's what we're going to try to cover right now. We need to have an introduction to these creative financing strategies, okay? And that's what we're going to go over. Now, this introduction to creative financing strategies, for a real estate deal to work, there's got to be some form of creative financing. And to understand these techniques better, we're going to break them down, and there's 3 categories. As you notice in the middle of this slide, it says no financing strategies. What's that? Well, it means that there's no financing at all. This is where we use a flipping technique with either a lease option or a wholesale. What's the second one? Is the existing financing. Well, that means what current financing is in place. This is where you structure that deal around that existing financing. And what generally is like a contract for deed or a lease option with the existing financing. And new financing, sometimes you got to bring in new financing. It's either from a bank or a hard money lender or a private lender. Okay. Now, if you're going to buy a rental property, it does not always require you to get new financing. Many times rentals can be structured around the seller's existing financing. But there'll always be some deals that require you to get brand new financing. So let's cover these 3 categories so you better understand when you need money or you need credit and when you don't. So this first one, investment strategies require no financing. So what is it? No financing means no qualifying and no money. Of course, if there's no financing, it means that you don't need any credit because there isn't any financing for you to qualify for. It also means that you don't need any money. What little money you might need would usually be for these binder deposits or down payment deposits. So in this category is especially important if you have limited funds or bad credit. So flipping real estate, what's that all about? Well, the most popular way to make money in real estate is using no money, credit, or financing by flipping property. That's where you put a contract on a house. It could be a sale and purchase agreement or an option to purchase agreement. Then either you assign the contract or do a double closing. Assigning means you sell your interest in the contract. A double closing means you actually buy it and then you resell it. So there's 2 sets of closing costs. That's why it's called a double closing. Again, you most likely have to put these down payments on the deal to the seller, but you can quickly get this money back by getting a new binder deposit from your new buyer. In using the strategy, you're going to get property sold before you even have to close with the seller. And by having a contract to buy the property, you have what's called an equitable interest. Now, equitable interest is an important term. It's a legal term. It means you have a legal right in the property. This means you can sell your right to purchase the property to another buyer by assigning the contract for a fee. You can also give your buyer a new purchase contract saying that you will sell the property to them right after you buy it from the seller, and this is called a double closing. So the key to flipping is the double closing, which is also referred to as a double escrow, simultaneous escrow, or simultaneous closing. And when you do flip a property, is schedule your closing with the seller and then schedule your closing with the new buyer to be done right afterwards. Now you're going to take title of that property just long enough to immediately resell to your buyer. Now at closing, the buyer, it's going to bring the funds to purchase the property either in cash or by getting a loan. The closing agent is going to take the money from your buyer and use it towards the purchase of closing with the seller. Both closings are done back to back, and the cash flows from your buyer to your seller simultaneously. And this is why this type of closing is commonly referred to as a simultaneous closing. And in the end, this closing agent is going to subtract how much you bought the property for from how much you sold it for, and then you're going to walk out with a check for the difference. And we're going to cover these double closings in more detail when we talk about agreements. Now, buyer's lists. Now, to flip a property effectively, you should have a list of potential buyers ahead of time. By having buyers already lined up, you're going to be able to more effectively target your buying efforts and be able to make offers with more confidence, knowing that you can get that property resold before you have to close with the seller. Now, having a backup strategy, exit strategy, of course, you're going to always need a backup strategy in case you can't get this property resold fast enough. After all, you signed this agreement saying that you're going to purchase the property with that seller. If you fail to do so, not only would you lose your deposit, but possibly your whole reputation locally. A knowledgeable investor will have a backup plan in place ahead of time, just in case they can't flip the property in time. What most investors do, they get a private lender to give them a private loan to purchase the property until they can find a new buyer. And at that time, the new buyer either assumes the private loan or the private loan gets paid off. Now, don't forget, you only need hard money as a backup for when you do not sell the property before you have to close. And we're going to cover this more later when we talk about financing sources. Now, there's another way you can flip the property without having to worry about being able to close, and that's by simply optioning the property and using a standard option. Now, when you option a property, it's not saying, you're not saying that you definitely will purchase the property. In fact, you're going to be letting the seller know up front that you only plan to exercise your option once you find another buyer. Also, not only do you still not need any credit, but you can get into the deal using a smaller down payment, like $10. And how